On today's episode of the MilCom Founders Podcast, we'll meet Ian Garrett, a former U.S. Army cyber officer who has transitioned his military expertise into the startup world. Ian is the CEO and co-founder of Phalanx, a company that helps startups and SMBs transform every document they share into actionable insights on engagement and intent. His background as a data scientist in the defense sector gave him deep understanding of visibility, control, and trust when managing information, principles that directly translate to his entrepreneurial work. Ian combines his operational military knowledge with his PhD research to bring insights to the intersection of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. He has spoken at events and conferences on cybersecurity, AI, startups, and how artificial intelligence is shaping the future of work. We're looking forward to hearing about Ian's journey from cyber operations to building innovative solutions for the business world.
Welcome to the MilCom Founders Podcast, where we champion and celebrate military community business founders. In each episode, we will talk with a MilCom business founder to learn how they work through various obstacles and opportunities in business and in life. I'm your host, Rod Loches. Let's meet today's guest. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MilCom Founders Forum Podcast. I'm your host, Rod Loches. Today, we have the opportunity to champion and celebrate Ian Garrett. He's a West Point graduate and the founder and CEO of Phalanx, a very cool data security firm. Ian, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to learning more about you and Phalanx. So let's take a step back before we talk about the business and stuff. But who is Ian Garrett? Tell us a little bit about yourself personally, if you could.
Yeah, so grew up in the Northern Virginia area, actually where I currently live. As you briefly mentioned, I had a stint in active duty Army, commissioned through West Point, and so I had spent some time outside of the DC area, but at the end of about 5 years or so, switched over to the reserves and then returned to the DC area. I really like it for the diversity here and access to a lot of, technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. It's truly a nexus of people, ideas, everything. And I know myself, Ian, I tried to move back to Ohio 20 years ago. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not leaving DC. And like you said, I like the diversity of everything, which was great. It is great. It is great. So what are you passionate about besides work? What are some of your interests that you like to do?
Yeah. So I mean, well, family. I got a 1-year-old son. Happy new dad. Also a cat dad. My wife and I like to go on hikes in the area. Actually, a nice benefit of being in here as well, DC area, is that you can always pop into the city. Pretty easy. You can go westward into the mountains and have a great hike. So we enjoy being outside.
Absolutely.
We recently picked up gardening, so that's been a lot of fun.
Oh,
And then personally, I like cooking and also like spicy food, so I make my own hot sauce. So
oh, very
the
cool.
Chipotle ghost pepper hot sauce. I like experimenting with stuff like that.
That's cool. Well, I think that goes to don't you have a PhD in, what is that in, what's your PhD in? Data science?
Computer engineering. Yeah, so it's a mix between our research is a mix between AI and cybersecurity. So pretty
Jeez.
unsurprising that the phalanx is what it is.
That's right. That's very true. That's very true. So Ian, what's a personal challenge that you've had to overcome in your life? What's something, heck, it might be getting into West Point. What's one of those challenges that you've faced?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge, honestly, was the shift into entrepreneurship. So, pretty early days, even like through high school, I always wanted to start a company. Really, I just love building stuff and creating. So that's never changed. But going into the military and then from after that, I went into defense contracting. It's pretty structured and you don't really have I didn't have the startup community. I didn't have a lot of peers that knew about entrepreneurship. So for me to make
Yeah.
the jump from a pretty safe and structured environment into entrepreneurship it was a huge leap. And honestly, I can thank the 2020 COVID era to help push me along to kind of realize the passion that I had for entrepreneurship. But making the jump is a pretty after doing it now it's not so scary, but at the time having a
Mhm.
very traditional kind of structured safe path. It was like, should I continue down, a corporate path, or should I make the jump?
Yeah. Well, even I'll say the science with a PhD with that you have. I mean, it is a big shift, and it's interesting. I wonder what percentage of PhDs actually go into business for themselves. Is it higher or is it lower? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, it
So,
depends on really what people are trying to do with it. Obviously, there's the
yeah,
academia route, which honestly, for a lot of professors, their individual labs can be seen almost like little businesses, since they're responsible for gaining grants and producing
that's
research
true.
that is, paper producing. But yeah, I mean, it's always a consideration, the more you spend investing in things like degrees or
Yeah.
certificates, any kind of other qualifications, it feels like the jump to entrepreneurship is like, oh, did I just waste waste all that
Hmm.
time and effort? But I try not to subscribe to the sunk cost fallacy.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So you mentioned communities. What entrepreneur communities have you been part of or are you part of that you've found to be very helpful or even powerful? Ones that you
Yes,
might
I mean,
suggest? Yeah.
for us, the biggest was our jump into the Techstars program. So we did Techstars New York City pretty early days, and that was a catalyst for us. It really went from I just knew a couple people that had started startups to really being tossed in headfirst into the ecosystem. And like the startup ecosystem in the DC area is definitely growing, but having that exposure in New York as our initial exposure to the startup ecosystem definitely was eye-opening for us, and really
Hmm.
great to have that as our foundation, to
Hmm.
then bring back to this region.
Yeah. Well, Techstars is probably one of the most well-known incubator systems that are out there, right?
Yeah,
I'd
between that
imagine.
and Y Combinator, which we were
Oh,
in the finals for, but then we chose Techstars.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's one or the other for you.
Yeah, well, they were inviting us for the final round for Y Combinator, but then Techstars gave us an acceptance. And then so for us, it was like, do we take the bird in hand?
Yeah, that's right.
And the expiration on the acceptance was before we would find out for Y Combinator. So we're like, let's just take what we
Yeah,
got. Techstars New York City is outstanding. So, and for
that's
us,
right.
we're East Coast based. So, it wasn't a downgrade for us to go to a program that we thought was outstanding
Yeah.
versus having to travel
Yeah,
across the
it's yeah.
country.
When you have a choice of two great things, that's a good challenge to have, you know. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So what do you do to take care of yourself? You know, you work, you got a little one at home and a cat dad too. How do you take care of yourself? What's the key to doing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest thing is just getting outside. I mentioned that, we like hiking, but even just like
Yeah,
walking, running, it between the companies and being a new dad, it's been interesting to learn how to fit all that in.
yeah,
But ultimately, for me, I think it's very important to just be able to get outside in general, see
yeah,
some trees.
absolutely. So Ian, how did you ever decide to apply and then go to West Point? That's a huge commitment at age 16, 17, 18 as you're starting to look at your options for your future. How did that transpire?
Yeah, so that I guess I was like a nerdy little kid. So it was middle schoolish time frame, and I was talking to my dad, like I was like, "Oh, I want to challenge,
Wow.
what school, one day, what college would be difficult." And then he mentioned pretty much the standards, like the, Harvard
Uh-huh.
MITs out there. And then he's like, "Oh, actually, also there's a school called West Point, which in addition to the academics, you have to deal with a physical and military aspect to it all." And then so for me, I always kind of kept that in mind. He did a great job and introduced me. He was at AOL at the time, and one
I'll
of
darn.
one of the people he worked with was a former general, but also a West Pointer. And then so he's like, talk to this guy. So I think that was also pretty impressionable upon me. And then for high school, actually for anyone that's in the DC area, I went to the TJ, so the Science and Tech School. So, I
Yeah.
was looking for an atypical college experience afterwards as well. So I figured, kind of the regular colleges, I could always go for grad school, but Something like West
Mhm.
Point only has an undergrad, so I figured why not mix it up? And then, of course, I got there and I sure got what I asked for in terms of
Yeah, I bet.
atypical. But
Uh,
yeah, I come from a non-military family, so it was definitely a culture shock for me.
Well, it's kind of amazing because I don't think there's a lot of kids who start contemplating West Point in junior high school. That's pretty cool. And that's neat that your dad exposed you to that, said, hey, what about this?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I
especially from
mean,
a non-military, yeah.
it's definitely, as a kid, you only know so much. So it's great to have adults that, are able to just expose you to, hey, these things exist out in the world, which,
Yep,
helps us as when growing up to just think about it.
yep. So what's a story that happened for you, even at West Point, that has stuck with you and helped you become the business owner and man that you are today?
Yeah, so I think it's honestly so I was part of the Glee Club at West Point, which was great. I've always enjoyed music. I did play like 5 or 6 instruments in high school,
Wow.
but and then sang obviously for Glee Club. But one of the things that was very eye-opening from that experience is so we did a lot of great concerts all over the country, and what was really interesting to me is that they would pretty much there was not a lot of training beyond our regular training on how to act, I guess, in terms of professionalism. But the group always got it together. But for me, what was amazing was, for us, we're just a bunch of college kids, and they
Uh-huh.
put us out in like the Grand Ole Opry, or they'll put us out there, and for the audience, they're like, oh wow, these professionals. And then for us,
Uh-huh.
we're just like, hey, we're a bunch of just college kids up here singing. So seeing it's kind of, I guess, the initial beginnings of what would be an imposter syndrome, where it feels like, like, oh, I don't really belong here among professionals. I'm just a college kid. But the reality is we're up there performing, we're doing the thing. And
Yeah.
it was initially starting a business felt the same way, where, I was invited into a lot of rooms where I was like, I just made this thing up. Like I just made this company up. Like
Yeah.
we just created a product. Yeah, we got some customers, but I don't have any legitimacy behind this company other than we just made it. But they would invite us into the rooms with, C-level executives of
Yeah.
privileged companies, or we were selling to Fortune 500 companies, and in the room getting actual consideration for the product. And it's moments like that where initially you're like, oh, I don't belong here, but then you realize that it's kind of like that for everybody all the time. So really, if you belong there as much as you want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. So does it apply? Fake it until you make it. Does that apply?
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, I would say absolutely. It's just never if I realize actually if you
yeah.
feel like you belong there all the time, then you're really not pushing yourself. The only time you're ever growing and pushing yourself is if you're constantly feeling like you don't belong, 'cause then you're constantly putting yourself at the edge of your comfort, which is where I've found myself often.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true because at the edge of your comfort is where you grow, right? If you stay in your box or your comfort zone or whatever, then how do you grow, right?
Right. I
So
like to, I don't know if I've heard it somewhere, but essentially it's like if you want to go somewhere, if you want to achieve a goal that you haven't achieved before, you're not going to get there by doing the same stuff that you are comfortable doing, or else you would have already achieved it.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Absolutely. So you're in the Glee Club, and what did you end up majoring in, and how did that translate into your time in active duty?
Yeah, so that all definitely goes hand in hand. So I was a computer scientist, unsurprising. So I did computer science in college or undergrad and graduate. But yeah, computer science in undergrad. And then actually what helped was so for the structure of the academies is they have their permanent party professors, but they also have a number of instructors that cycle through from active duty.
Yep.
So a lot of your, especially the more like entry level, you'll get people have gone to grad school, or in the army, went to grad school, come to West Point for 3 years and teach, and then they'll go back to do more operational stuff in the army again.
Hmm.
And then so during that time, we had a number of professors that were doing, cybersecurity related work. We were able to get a lot of exposure to that world pretty early on. And then for us, that's great. So in addition to your traditional computer science knowledge that you're learning, we're also learning about a lot of cybersecurity principles, like a
Yeah.
lot of hands-on cybersecurity. And this was really before cybersecurity, like as a major, or cybersecurity as like a coursework was, really a thing.
Yeah.
So that was, again, great for us. We were able to jump into industry essentially with all this exposure that, wasn't really offered at the academic level at the time. And then so unsurprisingly from there, and good timing wise, is pretty much as I was commissioning, they were creating the Army Cyber Branch. So I was able to enter the Army Cyber Branch pretty much from day one of the
That's
branch.
amazing. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was great. Got to do a lot of fun, cybersecurity work, mostly focused on the offensive side of things. So again, a lot of stuff that you don't get to really see commercially.
Yeah.
And then yeah, pretty much transitioned over into the reserves about what year is it? 7 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
And having a lot of fun with that as well.
And how little as a country we talk about our offensive capabilities in the cyber realm. You never hear, very rarely do you ever hear it talked about. And I'm pretty attuned to cybersecurity because of the industry we're in. And you just don't hear about that much, protecting ourselves through a good offense even,
Yeah,
Um,
which I think a lot of nation states are pretty quiet on their capabilities. It's because it's like once you push out, hey, we can do this, or hey, this is what exists, you pretty much lose the advantage on it. So,
mhm.
if you expect you have a cool tool, if you have a cool way of doing things, as soon as it's out there, it's useless. It's
Yeah.
probably why nobody really likes to talk about offensive capabilities, because as soon as anyone knows, it's done.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. Interesting. You spent some time in the reserves and spent some active duty. What's a military learning that you've had, or a couple, whatever, one or two that you've learned in the military that you think directly apply to business? And I'm guessing that with your industry experience in the military and what you do with Phalanx, there's got to be probably too many to be able to share right now. But what's one or two of those insights?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is honestly not a cybersecurity specific one, but it's really just resiliency, or as a lot of people like to define, grit for
Hmm.
conscientiousness. But yeah, I mean, that like grit factor, I would say, is probably the biggest benefit and lesson learned. So I think and same with resiliency, is the biggest thing is it's like a not just a learned skill set, but one that requires practice and training. So going back to comfort zones, if you live in a comfort zone constantly, you never really get the chance to exercise resilience or grit in ways that you can train on it. You're essentially only reactive to situations that require resilience. But if you're never training on it, then you never build the kind of foundation that allows you to grow with it.
It's almost like the grit muscle. If you're
Right.
not using it and don't figure out how to endure, then how will you endure when you have to?
Right.
And
And if you're only using it in a survival situation, then you're not truly able to build it. You're just
yeah,
surviving. And, situations like being in the military, or plenty of other, honestly, a PhD program is
yeah,
another one where I know is pretty tough for, a lot of people going through that. It's an entrepreneurship. It's the same, it's like it's a lot of the similar kind of moments where there isn't just a single point in time that's difficult. It's the unknown, a long
mhm,
unknown, where that's where I think, people's mental health can deteriorate, because it's not just like I'm going to do a challenge, it's like I'm not, oh, let me just do a marathon. It's no, it's I don't know where the end is in sight. I don't know when the next victory is going to be. I got to just keep doing what I'm doing, and hope for the best. And I think that's where it can be challenging if you haven't gone through those kind of situations before.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it takes a lot of, like you said, grit and determination to stay the course. That's a term I always use, is stay in the course. You think you got the right idea and you're doing step by step. it's important. So to the business finally, and tell us about Phalanx. How did you get the idea? Where did it go from an idea to a business?
Yeah, so it's been a number of, I guess, course corrections. I pretty much say like micro pivots, but
Hmm.
yeah, we've changed. It's funny because the technology hasn't changed too much over the years, but the messaging behind it, the branding behind it has changed. But for people that have been following us since day one, they'll hear a lot of similar threads.
Uh-huh.
So where we're at today with it all is actually more on the document intelligence side than anything else. Obviously, we have the data security component, as you talked about, but what we realized is, in addition to security, there's a lot of need for just actionable tools. At the end of the day, we're all drowning in data. So the more
Yeah.
data being provided isn't necessarily helpful, but not having that data also isn't the right answer either, right? So if everyone has a lot of data, not having that data is gonna put you at a disadvantage. But if you're drowning in data, then you might as well, it's the same as if you didn't have it. So what we wanted to do was provide in addition to security, the ability to understand how people are interacting with the documents you're sending, and most importantly, what to do about it. Because again, it was a direct pain that we were feeling as startup founders that, at
Mhm.
the end of the day, we were tired of sending stuff out, pitch deck, proposals, contracts, and then not knowing, it felt like we are shooting those docs into a black hole. So
Yeah.
we're actively solving that problem today.
That's interesting. Okay. Okay. And why did you start your business? I mean, what was the 2 years ago, 3 years ago when you started Phalanx? What was that thing you said, I got to do this? What was that
Yeah, I mean,
moment, that aha?
it wasn't, I know, so it started with a fallacy, which was I felt like you had to have a good idea to start a business. And then so for me, it was waiting until I had, thought about a bunch of good cybersecurity ideas that, didn't execute on it and then saw that they became startups later. And then so eventually I was like, okay, I need to like just do it. And it was actually more around AI security at the time, based off of my dissertation work. I ended up jumping into that too early. So we pivoted off of that. Honestly, it's still a little too early based off of what we were gonna do. But that's that was enough to get me started. But again, I had the incorrect thought that it starts with you have to have a great idea, and then then you turn that into a company. And then the second fallacy of then you build it and they'll come. So
Uh-huh.
much
Right.
the way it should have been is just jump into it with whatever kind of half-baked idea, and then from there figure out what based off of that, what do people actually want to buy? Like what are problems,
Yeah.
what are pain points that people actually are having, and then modify it in a way that fits in a real pain point versus starting with a good idea based off industry experience, saying like, oh, this is what the
Hmm.
industry needs.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. And I have a question, but I think I already get it. My question is, why are you uniquely the one to start this business? And I think that's already evident, hand over fist with what your experience and stuff with your education. That's for
Yeah. I
sure.
mean, it's a mix of that and again that startup experience. It's we are the directly feel the pain of what we're solving for, and
Yeah,
fortunately have the experience to solve for the pain that that we're feeling.
that's right. Now, do you work with your brother?
Yes, so it's a brother team. We've been building things together for a long time, so it was great to have the opportunity to jump together in business. I think, we've always talked about doing something as a collaboration. So
Yeah.
it's very complementary skill sets. So he's, been an engineer, software engineer, systems engineer. His whole career, he actually has built things to enterprise scale. So while I've been more of the science side of the house from an engineering standpoint, he's definitely, truly an engineer. So we've been able to move
Uh-huh.
pretty quickly because of that. We don't have to rely on outside agencies to build anything. We don't have to rely on, if losing a key software engineer and then oh we can't build our product. So it's been interesting.
Right, right. That happens. Yeah, that happens. Yeah. But working with I have four brothers, and one of them worked for me for about 8 years, and it was a great time. But before that, I always said I hired him right out of college. I always said
Mhm.
I'll never work with my brothers, never ever. But it ended up working out great. But it's pretty cool that you and your brother. What's your brother's name again?
Austin.
Austin. It's pretty neat that you guys have the opportunity to do that and to be building Phalanx together. That's pretty unique. That's
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
pretty.
it solves for the biggest thing that would have slowed us down otherwise, which is just trust. We fully trust each other. We're pretty much always aligned on major company decisions. So not having that as an issue in the back burner has been, again, incredible for the startup experience. I've heard a
Yeah.
lot of horror stories from a lot of peers that their co-founders weren't someone that they could deeply trust, and it's caused, issues later on.
Oh, 100%. That is probably one of the biggest things is one of the founders, yeah, is a pretender and or a dreamer, not a doer. And
Mhm.
that causes a lot of problem. That's for sure. So who is your ideal client now with Phalanx after your micro pivots, and where do you find your ICP?
Yeah, so it's really, surrounding about the use case of sending something and wondering what to do about that. So what that ends up looking like is either small businesses or, really small teams that do a lot of either business development or sales or, financial teams that deal with interacting with other entities that want to protect that data, but also ensure that it actually gets delivered to the right person. So, I mean, yeah, our biggest ICP really is the small teams that sell into larger enterprise. Again, sending a contract, proposal, even, sending their own case studies, and then saying,
Hmm.
okay, is not only is the person that I'm sending it to opening it and how are they interacting with it, but, if they're sending it to other people, how are those people interacting with it? Who are those people? Just again, really bringing more visibility and insight into what's normally just an absolute black hole.
Yeah. So document analytics in some ways. So if I send an Excel spreadsheet to a client, I can tell that they didn't open it up, or I can find out that they forwarded it to three people, things of that sort.
Yeah, or if you send a PDF and it's a 10 pager and you could
Uh-huh.
see we have heat maps and everything too, so you can see that they only made it
Wow.
33% of the way down your PDF, or they only spent 5 seconds on the first two slides of their PowerPoint, and then they spent a lot of time on your pricing page or something. And
Mhm.
then again, most importantly is the so what factor. So it's not good enough just to tell people the raw analytics anymore, because that's just, it's too much data. Most people say, well, isn't, doesn't other tools already do that? And it's like, yeah, other tools will give you the raw data, but nobody else will tell you what to do with it.
Mhm. Got it. So what's one thing that you did learn in the Army that's helped you scale your business and getting it ready for the hyper growth that I think you're ready to soon experience?
Yeah, so it's the biggest thing is all about personnel. So building a team, managing a team, it's the army way, and that's I think one of those skill sets and one of those things that you learn that it will continually benefit the more you learn how to cultivate that skill set. And t a team is the only way to go. I know a lot of spotlights on founders and a lot of company spotlights. It's all about the founder doing everything and how they're, the most important person. But, behind every founding team is, a team behind them to actually execute the vision. So, one person, two
Yeah.
people, even with AI, can
Yeah.
do it all. So, having a team behind you is the most important thing.
Yeah. And having that leadership and knowing how to build that team and how to quite frankly inspire and yeah and lead them is probably the biggest challenge. We're a team of 14 in our company, and it's still the biggest challenge we have is
Mhm.
making sure you get the right people on the bus, great people, but are they in the right seat? Do
Right.
they know where we're all going? It all comes back to that thing called leadership, and how do you do it, and how do you get people on board to follow you, to follow the vision? So that's a really good insight. So it's easy to build your team then, right?
Yeah, it's if only,
Uh-huh. That's
especially early
right.
days, as you know, the fewer people you have, the more important every single person is.
Yeah.
And the reality is, the beginnings of any business, startup, small business, or otherwise, those first few people ha have to wear many hats. So if you can't find someone who can operate across a couple different lanes, you might find a specialist who's really good at one thing, but they might not be the person for your 5-person team. They might be the person for your 15-person team or
That's
50-person team.
right.
And that's kind of the hard part is how do you find the people that are the right person for the right moment? Like you said, the right person for the right seat today and where you're going in the next couple days versus someone who's an outstanding star player. They
Yeah,
can't really be a star player until you're a bigger team.
that's right. Would Jordan been as big of a hit as he was way back in the day if he didn't have Pippen and some of the other surrounding players around him? So it's very true. Very true. So what's an opportunity, an obstacle that you've overcome in Phalanx, you and Austin, the rest of your team, that other veteran founders would find helpful to know about?
Yeah, so the biggest is what I always hear people ask that are in the cusp of starting a business, which is how do I finance it? So that is always a challenge. And I would say to that, it depends on what kind of business you're looking to build. We went down again between the Techstars route and everything else, we went down taking VC money, which makes sense for a product like ours, doesn't always make sense for every type of business. But there's always a way you can always raise money from investors, even if they're not VCs. So, for example, friends and family or an angel round definitely makes sense for a lot of businesses. But ultimately, I think the biggest thing I learned, whether or not you take it, well, for one, is for a lot of businesses that aren't location based or have a
Yeah.
heavy hardware aspect to it. And if it's services based or especially like kind of remote services based, where either you can travel to it or it doesn't again you don't need the building, or if it's software especially, is you actually don't need a lot of money up front to get that started. What most people
Hmm.
think they need the money for is like salaries. And the reality is, starting a business is not going to be, you're not gonna leave, a corporate job and then roll into a business with anywhere remotely close to what you were
That's
making
right.
corporate. So for one, just got to get used to that. But for two, once you cut out that part, I think a lot of people get hung up on that part of it. Of course, you need, whatever you need to survive, but like once you get rid of the I need X amount of money because salary, the actual startup costs for a business for a lot of these businesses are very low. You can
Um,
incorporate and everything. You can pretty much get everything you need up and running for less than $1,000. And
mhm.
also sales. Yes, tools and marketing and all that like ads, it costs a lot of money, but to get those first few customers, I always call it a knife fight. It's like you
Mhm.
and another person and you're getting out, like you just get out there, talk to people, like you can get those first few customers. It'll take time out of your day, but it doesn't cost you a lot of money to do. And honestly,
Mhm.
until you get those first few customers, it's not even worth spending the money on the marketing because you don't even know what you're truly selling.
Yeah, we call that, or as you know, it's called customer development, and I'm a big proponent of it. Too many people talk to us about, I need money, and where do I get money? And like, the money doesn't matter if you don't have customers, if you don't
Right.
have people that are ready, willing, and able to pay you today, or even prepay you for it. So I fully agree with that. I think that's a great insight. Hey, I know our time's running short right now. But Ian, what's a question I should have asked you already and I haven't? You're like, why the heck hasn't he asked me that yet?
Oh, that's always a good one that I like to end with as well. Yeah, I mean, I guess the best question that you didn't ask that I can think of that would be great for the community is somewhat related, I guess, to the last, but
Uh-huh.
is how to go find a network in your local area. Again, I started with, well, I mean, even with the Texas stuff, it started with the same kind of tip, which is make sure you talk about what you're trying to do with as many people as possible. And I think a lot of people it go in similar that they're afraid of investors. I think a lot of people are afraid to talk about, starting a business because for one, they'll think of, oh, people won't take me seriously until I do it, which is not true.
Yeah,
And
that's
for
right.
two, even worse is, oh, someone will steal my idea.
Mhm.
The reality is the ideas are useless until they become something. If you look at any startup, you can always find like 5 to 10 more of them of companies doing the same exact thing but ultimately the execution is going to be wildly different, from a go-to-market strategy standpoint. Ideally, they're differentiating between each other. If not, they will eventually find differentiation. Because ultimately, even if it's the exact same problem, even with the exact same ideal customer
Mhm.
base, you'll find that there's ways to service that customer base in very different ways. Because again, it all goes down to the pain point, and those pain points can vary. So, again, going back to my original point on where to find community is just start asking, and then you'll eventually uncover one person talks to another person, and they'll refer you. Then out of the blue, someone will say like, "Oh, hey, you should talk to XYZ person. They started a business." But if for some reason you can't seem to find anybody, if you happen to live near a major city area, just Google. There's going to be tons of entrepreneurial
Yeah.
meetups. But if you're not, honestly, just go to your local Chamber of Commerce meeting, any a Rotary Club. You'll find entrepreneurs there, and they're
Mhm.
going to be more than happy to pull more people into the cult that is entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great insight. That's for sure. So, Ian, what are some resources that you found helpful? Books, podcasts, personalities, other than the community, which I think is probably the most important. But what are some things like that you follow? Podcasts, books, personalities, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of great newsletters right now that I've been following. For a lot of it's like a lot of stuff is just growth focused at this point.
Uh-huh.
So for us, that again, it's you kind of focus on what is the biggest challenge, and we're fortunate that the product development, the engineering has not been a challenge. So
Yeah.
or even the business operations. Like I have a pretty strong passion towards automation, if unsurprisingly. So, and I love new technology and tools. So, we've been able to build the back of the house pretty efficiently. So our biggest challenge has always been growth. So I spend a lot of time looking for any kind of podcasts or
Mhm.
newsletters or any kind of information as it relates to growth. Yeah, so I mean, there's a newsletter called I think Demand Curve. That's always been a great one. I think it's also associated with an agency that'll help you out as well. But
Oh,
the
sure. Better
newsletter,
be.
yeah, their newsletter is outstanding. The Alex Hormozy stuff for podcasts, I know he's been pushing out a lot of great content.
Who's
Yeah,
that again?
Alex Hormozy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's last couple years definitely seeing, at least I get hit with him like on every possible like outlet like
Okay.
YouTube and Spotify. At least the algorithms know to push his content to me.
Yeah,
But if
absolutely.
for whatever reason you haven't been able to see any of that, his stuff's been solid.
Got it. Okay. Well, Ian, thanks for your time today. So much appreciated. We're going to donate $100 to the Dick Logis Scholarship Fund. Both my grandpas, it's really an honor, both my grandpas, they were both the veterans from World War II, and both owned their own businesses, which is why I love veteran entrepreneurs. I grew up with them, and you're one of them. And thank you so much for being a veteran entrepreneur. It's fantastic.
Thanks for having me,
So
and always happy to share.
great. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on the MilCom Founders Podcast. If you know a MilCom founder with a story to share, reach out to us at milcomfounders.com. For each guest on our show, One Degree Financial donates $100 to the Dick Logis Veteran Entrepreneur Scholarship Fund, supporting education for children of a MilCom business owner. Stay ready.